Shiana Pose. We have a wonderful guest today. Would you please introduce yourself to the community?
Great to meet you. My name is Mo Hasan, and I'm an entrepreneur and a speaker, an author, and someone who really loves living life.
Awesome. So Mo, what transpired you to be an entrepreneur? We could start from there.
Well, I think I could go back to my first business, which was to just solve a problem that I had in life. I was in the 4th grade, and I wanted to have extra money to eat stuff that my family wasn't cooking for me. Right, so I grew up in a typical Asian household where my grandmother made rice and lentils and beans and 3 types of meat and fish, and there was all this food, and all I wanted to do was eat American food. And so we were pretty poor growing up in the U.S. I remember having free lunch, but I was a skinny little kid, so my mom always gave me a few extra dollars every week to buy food. Well, I didn't really need extra money in school, so what I would do is actually loan out money to other kids who wanted to get ice cream and they'd already spent their money, and give them a loan for 100% interest a day. Back then I didn't understand compounding, but they were paying 100% interest a day. And that became my first business. It was really just to solve a problem for myself. And then I used that money to go to the grocery store and buy food that I wanted. And that was the beginning. It was just a path to, hey, I have a problem, I want to solve it.
That's pretty amazing. So let's go into more deep into that journey. So what happened after that?
Well, after that, I was still a kid. I did that for a couple of years. It was a useful business. And then eventually I got to high school, and I did another very interesting business, which is I was good with technology at the time. And I don't know if you remember dot matrix printers, the ones that made the noise and had the strings on the side. So. And so I had a computer at home. And I remember for Latin class, I would actually print out study guides, which are just small, and people were using them to cheat, but I was using them as study guides. And I made a lot of money selling study guides for school.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, wonderful.
And then led into other entrepreneurial adventures, but eventually, I did a combination of things in my life. I've also worked a tremendous number of really amazing jobs, too, along with having businesses. So it wasn't just like one-sided for me.
Right. So what kind of spiraled you to have a real business? What transpired, or how did that transpire?
That's necessarily like, what is a real business? I'm like, do I even have I own multiple real businesses. I think what really was the transition was seeing that as a consultant, even though I had other businesses before, what really made that final changeover was that I wanted freedom.
Right.
And I wanted freedom that the work I'm doing was making an impact.
Got it.
And at the time, I was working as a senior consultant at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, doing what would be considered a very senior, glamorous position in D.C., yet I was not happy with the results of the work that I was doing.
Okay.
And it's because I could only impact so much, I still had the chairman's office, I still had Congress to deal with, I still had all of these entities that were perhaps and potentially in the way of progress and in the way of creating the final impact. So I thought, gosh, I really don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be confined to these contracts, these agreements, these regulations that limit what I'm able to achieve. And so once that decision was made, there was no going back for me.
Understood. Now, you said you also did some technology work, or you did that as well, or?
Yeah, I did quite a bit of technology work. In fact, early on in my career, I started off as a network engineer. And then I found myself very quickly being promoted into management, because at the time I was one of the few people that could actually communicate about the technology to the business users. And so that created many opportunities to rise to the ranks and do all of that. But I have a strong tech background.
Okay, so you made it more intuitive, and that's why you scaled up to where you are now.
Yeah.
Understandable. So along those journeys, so what is the life lesson of things that when you started a new company, how does that, for the younger people that are listening?
I would say that there's so many life lessons, First, it's hard for me to boil it down to one. Post-production editing. Or B-roll, whatever you want. So I'd say the most important thing is to be present. Is that all too often we allow our past to be a consideration of what decision to make. Perhaps our parents have raised us a certain way, or culture has told us that this is the way we should be or should not be, or even your education drives you to one direction or the other. My advice and the real lesson there is to be present.
Okay.
to be authentically you, to be present to all the things that you actually want, and then make decisions accordingly. Because I don't necessarily believe that being an entrepreneur is the right answer for everybody. I don't think everyone needs to be a leader. I don't think everyone needs to be all of these things that others are advocating. I think there's more than enough room in the world for players, for team members, for followers who can have wild success in their dreams and perhaps make way more money than they would have as an entrepreneur. So to just not be limited to this singular way of thinking that you must be this or that.
That's a very, very good point, because a lot of people, they see just the end results. They don't see what you have to go through as an entrepreneur or a business owner. Can you dive on that a little bit more as your experience when you were going through that growth?
Yeah, so I think some of the pain points to go through is really just overcoming your own emotional traumas and the impact from those traumas, right? To look at it from a couple of different things. One is, what is it in your personality that has you behaving a certain way? What is it that's autopilot behavior? Because I would find that I was so determined to do a good job at certain points in my life that I put my career far ahead of relationships that I was in.
Right.
Right? Like that became a problem because I grew up in this work ethic of always do a good job and always do a good job and always do a good job, and it was ingrained in me. And I remember there was points in my life that had a significant impact in my romantic life, in the way I treated friends, because I was basically the jerk that always put work first. Right? So that was another life lesson, is that for me, life is all of it. It's not just one of it. And in fact, I would consider myself one of the laziest people I know, because my inclination is towards leisure and pleasure, not towards work and production.
Right.
So to really look at what's important to you and not let those previously determined driving forces take you into directions that don't bring you happiness.
That's a very good point. Sometimes there's things that will drive you to make the right decision, to make you happy and also be successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
The things that you have to do. So when you were going through your journey, now what else did you stumble upon?
A lot.
Can you give us like an example?
Sure. So let me sort of break it up into a few different arenas of life in which I had confusion and then I had more clarity.
Okay.
One would be in just careers themselves. When I was younger, the upbringing was grow up, be a doctor, engineer, lawyer, do that traditional thing. And none of those things interested me.
Right.
As I was more progressed and more professional in my career, it was rise through the ranks and become an executive, right? Go work for a Fortune 100 company, become a C-suite executive, and that's the ultimate achievement. And that was like another thing that was there. But the truth is, you're able to carve out a career in any path that you want. And it doesn't matter what the area of expertise is, all skill sets can be learned, right? And then everything can be achieved. So I think the first thing is to understand for myself that I can have freedom in my career.
Right.
And so today I'm a fashion designer and a music producer and an author and a ballroom dancer and a professional chef and many things, because I have no limits in anything I want to learn. Now I'm learning how to sail boats, right? I've already learned how to sail. Now I'm learning how to race sailboats, right? And starting a racing team because I want to race sailboats. Who's going to stop me? Right?
Right, exactly.
So just creating that for yourself is one thing, that freedom itself. Right. The next is actually to know that a lot of what's been taught in economics and economic principles may not be completely true.
That is true.
Where I grew up with the understanding that the way to have financial success was to get a good job, make high income, maintain that consistently for a long duration, decades of time, and during that period invest a significant portion of that time. And then someday when I'm old and gray, I'm young and gray right now, but someday when I'm old and gray, then I could have like a comfortable life and a comfortable retirement. I find this to be a very, very limiting belief. The reality is, for economic conditions, when I look at my own life, I've now divided it up into a few different categories. There is what I do for production. And so when I'm doing work for clients, management consulting, etc., there's a range of work. There's work that I love doing that I'm happy to do regardless of the compensation.
Right.
Then there's work that I do that I consider my professional work, in which I will make the maximum compensation, and I'm looking for how do I get the maximum amount of dollars per hour when I exchange that effort for economic return. Right? So that's one aspect. Another is in the businesses that I create and the businesses that I operate, I look at my triple bottom line as a minimum. Financial returns are an easy thing to evaluate. But where's the impact? Where's the satisfaction for me? Where's the minimalization of customer service and headaches and problems and other things? Right? So there's other things that a business can produce when you evaluate it properly. And so the businesses that I work on are all designed to produce extraordinary results with me providing the minimum amount of effort.
Right.
And then the final component is to understand investments, to put my money to work for me.
Right.
To make sure that I'm getting proper returns that I consider appropriate, not what the market dictates that I should or should not be doing.
Absolutely.
So changing that simple, like employee, make a lot of money, to understanding that there's a more complete picture on economics was another area. And then I would say perhaps the biggest impact has been an understanding of spirituality and of my own emotional states. To understand that who I am is the spirit, that I possess and control a body, and that I experience emotions and utilize an intelligence gives me the freedom in each of those arenas to operate as a free being.
Amazing. Let's go back on the starting with the business and entrepreneur. How do you make sure you don't spread yourself too thin with different projects? How do you manage that?
I'm a weirdo. I don't believe in balance.
Okay.
I want to swing the pendulum as hard as possible in any direction. Right?
Yep.
If I'm going to love you romantically, man, let's go all the way. If we're going to do
Right.
business, let's go all the way. If we're going to do investments,
Right.
let's go all the way.
Right.
Balance is for people who love mediocrity.
Okay.
That's my viewpoint. If you
Right.
like your balance, go for it. It's
Right.
fine. But what I found is people who have balance in their life have mediocrity present.
Understand.
And that doesn't interest me. So how do I not spread myself too thin? Easy.
Yeah.
Be present. I only do one thing at a time.
Okay.
Right? I'm not going to be on a date and giving a talk and, no. I only do one thing at a time. And so there's a beginning, there's a shift in the universe, there's a completion, and after that completion, then I move on to the next thing and bring all my attention with it.
Wonderful, wonderul. So what's the current projects that you have right now? I know you said a lot of things, but what is your primary focus at this moment?
So my primary focus, my primary project right now is a project called the Creations Club. And for years, what I've identified is that there's a huge gap in the world, that if we could solve that gap, perhaps there'd be a lot more potential. And that gap I've identified is collaboration. We just don't work together. People don't work together in the same offices. I mean, think about how many college memes exist about group projects, right? And so we just have this global issue of a missing factor of collaboration. So I do a lot of education around it. And this is now my project to demonstrate collaboration in action. And the Creations Club is a private club operated as a multinational corporation designed for social entrepreneurs and conscious investors who want to come together to create a world that works by working together to solve that problem. So the club offers memberships to people like us, right? People that are out to make an impact, out to do good work, and want to be in this network of people. Right. So we're building residential communities, we're building businesses, we're building neighborhoods. The idea is to literally build a parallel universe in this dimension for those of us that want to participate in these concepts. And so, yeah, it's the biggest project I'm doing right now. Thank you.
So if you were younger, what would you say to your younger self?
Everything is a lie. Look and evaluate for yourself.
Okay, so assess everything as much as possible.
Pick up a dictionary.
Right.
And don't go past a single word, term,
right.
or symbol unless you know the dictionary quality definition of it.
Got it.
Because what I find is one of the paths to success, one of the paths to operating in power, is simply to move from confusion to clarity.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Most people don't know anything about anything.
Okay.
They speak in lies.
Okay.
They speak in hearsays, mythology, and they actually don't know the basic definitions of the words that they communicate in.
Right.
And so because they lack the understanding of the basics of language, they break integrity all the time. They break their agreements and end up out of ethics all the time.
Right.
Because they say things they don't mean.
Right.
They say things like I love you, and they don't know the definition of I love or you as an expression and all of the definitions of I love you.
Right.
And so they just speak in nonsense, and they communicate in nonsense, and the result is mediocre results.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
And how would if it's a younger person or our community of younger listeners are watching this and or listening to this, what would you say to them to guide them in the future?
The dictionary is your spell book.
Okay.
For you to create magic in this universe. Master the language.
Master it.
Master the
Can you
language.
give them an explanation? Because it's,
Well, sure. Here, let me give you an example of access.
sure.
Okay. In the world of investments, for instance, we've got traditional investors that are going through institutional investments in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, exchange-traded funds, dealing with broker-dealers, dealing with financial advisors, planners, etc. And then we have an entire world of alternative investments, whether it be cryptocurrency, real estate, commercial banking, etc. There's so much in that arena as well. In the world of alternative investments, if you don't speak the language, you don't even get to play. You don't even know it exists.
That makes sense, yeah.
If you're at a networking meeting and someone is talking about the different terms and risk mitigation strategies and you don't even know what they're talking about, they will know instantly and you will not be invited to the back room. You'll not be invited to the private sessions. You'll not be invited to where the things are actually happening.
Right.
Access, one of the points of access, one of the easy tools of access is actually to have clarity of mind.
Right. So communication is key.
Communication is extremely
for
important.
the younger generation. That
I think
wants
for
to-
all generations, and for all ages. I don't care what age you are. You can
Absolutely.
probably improve your communications.
Yeah, communication is a key for it.
Yes.
So what else projects do you have that's you're planning on moving forward?
Yeah, so I've got a few I'll share with you that kind of describe the range of
Sure.
things.
Yes, you do.
One of them is an e-learning course on money, which I called Building Financial Security. It's named very boringly, so that way it's an exactness in the corporate world.
Why would that be? Why would that separate from the other educational books out there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of education about there
Right.
about money. Unfortunately, the money education in most of the courses available on this planet are divided up into a few different sections.
Right.
In employee benefits, it's focused around retirement planning and what the employer offers. And the vast majority of that education is put together by the financial companies that are selling the products to
Right.
those entities and organizations.
Right.
Then you have consumer education, and consumer education is broken up into the financial literacy side, which is typically designed that if you're poor, they teach you how to be slightly less poor. Okay? Then on the money side, the vast majority of that education is driven by, again, companies out to sell you something. Oh, look, here's this entire seminar or course on real estate. Oh, and by the way, they're trying to sell you the back-end real estate product. Or here's this course on how to do retirement planning and long-term investments. Oh, and by the way, it's put together by American Funds, Fidelity, and these companies, and they're trying to convince you to buy those high-fee, high-cost mutual funds. Right? So there's a huge slant towards utilizing products and services. The education that I created was there because I hated all the other education out there. And I was a senior consultant at the SEC, and I was a senior consultant at Citigroup and Legg Mason and the World Bank and all these huge financial institutions that I thought I should know more. And what I realized is I still felt broke. And it wasn't until I started learning things like advanced risk mitigation strategies and tax strategies and all these other things that I started rounding out my understanding of money. And what I discovered is everything that I grew up with was nonsense. All the financial advice that I got from my family, I threw it all away. Because there's things to learn. And so this particular course, Building Financial Security, is not for how to get rich quick, how to do any of that. What it is a fundamental understanding of what it means to have a budget. Why is it that you may want to consider living on 40% of your net income, including all of your living expenses? Right? Which is jarring to most people to think about such things. And it's a fundamental understanding of debts and looking at liabilities, but separating liabilities from assets to understand that if you own your home, it is neither a debt, it is neither a liability or an asset unless we evaluate. We have to actually evaluate the data set. There's many people out there that are buying their primary residences that are, it's a liability for them. not an
Right.
asset. Right?
Right.
But they don't know how to evaluate that. So this is a course on you taking personal responsibility.
Amazing, amazing. So it's kind of, once they learn this course, they'll be able to navigate, right?
They'll
That's
get
what
to
it is.
make their own decisions. Right?
Right.
And if you want to hire financial planners, great. You'll be much more qualified
Right.
to qualify the people you're employing.
Right. I feel like sometimes people get scammed because of their lack of education. That's
Yeah.
what it is. It's
Even the ones with good education are getting scammed.
because they didn't get educated enough. So,
Because the education they got
yeah.
had a slant towards a
Ah.
viewpoint.
Okay.
Right?
That
So
makes
let me give you an example.
sense. Sure.
If I said to you, hey Ed, I'm going to give you an investment, and this investment has the potential, it could make 4%, it could make 8%, but for the first year it's going to cost you 10%. You're going to lose 10% of all your money. Would you take it?
That's a good question.
Well, that's very high. Most people would be like, ew, no, wait,
Right.
$100 would be 90?
Right.
Yet the reality is, if you bought a mutual fund, you're going to pay a 5 to 5.5% sales load up front.
Right.
There's a management fee of 1%. There's a 12B1 fee of 2.5%.
Right.
Then there's a fund management fee of 1 to 1.5%.
Yep.
Year one, you're already down 10%. And if you had a down year that market, your portfolio is down even more. But how many people read the prospectus?
Not much.
So
yeah.
this is why maybe you've been educated to invest in mutual funds, but you don't understand that there's fees and costs, and those things have an impact.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Those are actually gold nuggets and gems that you're giving to the community. Very amazing. So let's talk about a different subject. Now,
Okay.
you also said you were venturing or you had some projects in music, right?
Yes.
So please elaborate on that.
Okay. So one of the core set of teachings that I'm getting ready to release is on emotional intelligence and spirituality. And would be considered the fundamentals of these topics, not the advanced topics. The advanced topics are actually, I'm only going to be teaching inside the private club.
Got it.
Right? So this is just the fundamentals. And I looked at how is it that me as a communicator, as someone with a message to share, how are the ways that I can do that? And I already speak on stages and I already write books and those things, and those are great avenues. But there's something to be said for great music that inspires, music that teaches, music that heals. And so what I did is I've been partnering up with shamanic producers out of Colombia that have done everything from, the tribal side of healing, right, whether it be ceremonial healing, plant medicine, very, very ancient healings, and taking those beats and taking that stuff with my spoken word and making a whole new genre of music.
Wonderful.
And then taking those same teachings and then making music in every genre of music.
Right.
Right? Whether you listen to trap music or classical or hip hop or country western, why not make these teachings available across the board? And so I started a new record label to focus on just that.
Awesome, awesome. Do you feel that music is emotionally driven?
Absolutely. I think much more so than intellectually driven. I think music gives us a feeling. And depending on your understanding of space-time, oftentimes you'll find that there's music you've been listening to your whole life, and then there's a moment when you realize why you love that music so much. Right? And so music, and because we are emotional beings, music is such a strong way to connect with people. Right? That you can have the right beats, music can move you, music can bring you to tears, music can make you laugh, music can do many, many things. So I find that music is an amazing tool to move people emotionally.
Understandable. Do you feel that music sometimes helps your drive into projects or success that you're trying to do? What do you feel about that?
So it's kind of like two-sided. I would say that there are people that like external motivators, and there's people that like it for environmental conditions, and I'll explain the two.
Sure.
Okay? And there's nothing right or wrong here, it's just
Yep.
how people utilize it. So for some people, the external motivator is very, very useful. And you might find that in life, there's some areas where you're self-motivated, and some areas an external motivator is useful. So for instance, I love being active and playing sports and doing things, and I need no external motivator for do that. What I'm not necessarily a fan of is the technical work in working out. And I happen to be someone who uses a personal trainer who's awesome and amazing. And so my trainer, Craig, is there and serves as an external motivator for me in that arena of life. Right? So that's an example of an external motivator. So for some people, they'll find that, hey, I'll turn on and I'll crank this song that I really like, and that'll motivate me to work out, or that'll motivate me to do something. And so music can definitely serve as an external motivator there. Another is to use music as an environmental condition. I look at music as also that I'm living a movie. Right? In fact, I live many, many beautiful movies, like blockbuster movies and dramas, and occasionally a horror movie. But I live in many movies.
Right.
And so the music serves as a soundtrack to the movie that is my life.
Okay, that makes sense. Wonderful. So what do you feel that you're going to impact the community in as your progress goes?
So let's identify which community.
Right.
And so I can be a little bit more clear on
or
that.
Or whichever community or what community you're in.
I would say it's my target demographic of
Sure.
those that are looking to join the Creations Club.
Mm-hmm.
The impact I'm looking to do there is to simply remove the barriers to collaboration and to provide the tools for collaboration.
Got it.
To see what people can really do.
Awesome.
Right? To see what the potentiality of this planet truly is.
Awesome. And how do you feel with other people with different, say, personalities? Did you ever come across that? Any conflicting personalities?
Only everywhere. Only everywhere.
Only everywhere. Okay.
Everywhere. There's a different handling for different people.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of this is emotional intelligence training. And part of this is, running politics in an office. And part of this is being societally appropriate. And part of this is So let's start with just a basic understanding of human emotions. And I think that will give you some insights.
Sure.
I want you to imagine for a moment that all human emotions have been charted on a graph, because they have been. Okay? And so these emotions exist on a gradient scale. And that at a basic understanding of emotions, that emotions are simply energy in motion experienced by you. And so when you experience these emotional tonalities, that tonality actually determines your entire universe. So for instance, if you're in a state of anger and rage, your universe is very, very small. Very little data can come in, and very little data leaves. As a point of conveyance, if someone was passing you information, you'd have a very hard time conveying that information accurately. Right? And your universe is really limited to you and whatever you're dealing with at that moment of anger. Versus if you're in an emotional tonality of boredom, your universe is kind of you and what you're obligated to in your comfort zone. But you're neither motivated to do great things, nor are you so demotivated or angry to hurt anything. So you're kind of in this blasé state. Then you'll find that as we rise up higher, we're going to find people that are they're in an emotional tonality of enthusiasm or even strong enthusiasm. And so this shows up in many areas of their life. How they approach their romantic life, their family, their friends, their career, their projects, their churches and their organizations and their communities as a whole. They approach life with enthusiasm. So they're better at sports. So they're better at communication, better as teams, better as whatnot. But we also experience these emotional tonalities in two different conditions. One could be considered, this is our thermostat. This is the way we are most of the time. Another could be a temporary condition based on things that happen. So if you're typically an enthusiastic being and you're approaching everything great and everything is wonderful, and then all of a sudden your best friend passes away, you get fired from your job, and your girlfriend breaks up with you, and your bank account gets hacked, you're going to have a bad day, right? You're going to drop emotionally.
Right.
But you will rise back up because your thermostat is higher. So what there is to understand is when I'm with a being, regardless of them, is to first, are they in a permanent state or are they in a temporary condition? Right? Because that matters. That matters. Next, I will only communicate with them in the tonality that they're in right now. If you try to inspire an angry person, you're going to find yourself very frustrated. Okay. So what you can do with an angry person is help them rise up to boredom.
Okay.
And leave them there.
Leave them there.
Leave them there.
And why would you?
Because that's an improvement.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay. And so how do I deal with personalities? I only choose to have on my team and to deal with business partners and associates and be in relationships with, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera,
Right.
people that are emotionally uptone.
Wonderful. So I did some research about you, and you were a TEDx speaker. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So how did you get to be a TEDx speaker? Please explain to the community.
You're not going to like this answer. You're not
It's
going to
okay.
like this
I
answer.
mean,
Because I get asked this a lot.
The truth is the truth. So.
Okay. So I've given 2 TEDx talks, I've emceed another TED event, and did some other things at TED Salon, and did some poetry reading, and there's many other things that I haven't even published yet.
Sure.
So I love the TED brand. It's been a great community to be a part of. Here's how I got my first one. I was in Virginia at my private club, and I walked in, and my friend Kevin was like, "Yo, Mo, get over here and have a drink with us." And he's like, "Mo, meet my friend. He just bought the TEDx license here in Northern Virginia." And he looks over at Nick and he goes, "Nick, this is Mo. Mo's an amazing speaker. You should book him for your first TEDx." Nick goes, "Mo, you're booked. Hi, nice to meet you." That was the end of my booking process.
Wow.
And then we worked out logistics and things of that nature. But the agreement came because of network, because of friendships, because of relationships.
Right, that's very important, right? And that's why they say it depends. How big your net worth is your network, right? That's what one of those sayings.
It's a saying. I know a lot of people with a lot of big networks and their net worth is nothing.
Right.
And I also know a lot of people with very small networks and things of that nature. I think that's an overstatement.
Okay.
You know, we might see that as an occasional trend line, but I wouldn't count on that.
Right.
There's a lot of people who go out to a lot of networking meetings. Boy, they know tons of people,
Right.
and they can accomplish very little.
Right.
Right. So there's some other factors.
That does
there.
happen a lot.
Yeah. Part of it is to actually build relationships with people.
Right. That's the
Right,
key.
to have integrity, to have agreements, to have honor, to have respect and politeness and etiquette, and there's many other components that go into building quality relationships, and especially whether you're in the business community or in the investor community, there's a lot of nonsense out there.
Of course.
Right, to be able to slice through that. And I would say that one of the most important things in the networking space is to communicate in signal, not in noise.
Right.
You know, I see so many people, they show up at a networking space and all they do is talk about noise. Let's talk about news, weather, traffic, sports, and, you know, to add as a subset of traffic, parking. Right? So if I met you at a meeting and all you told me is that you hated traffic that day, parking was a pain in the butt to find, and that the weather is really bad, what do I know about you?
Right. Exactly.
Right? Because you've communicated only in noise. So, for instance, if you're going to communicate in signal. I don't even ask people how they are unless I actually care.
Right.
Right? Otherwise, let's just get right down to it. You know, people say silly things. Well, you got to break the ice. I don't know a single wealthy person interested in broken ice.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah,
Get
true.
to the point.
It's true.
Get to the point and talk about stuff that matters. You know? And I would say another thing in networking is to stop trying to be interesting.
Right.
Instead, be interested. Be interested in other people's ideas, other people's projects, other people's, you know, visions and ventures. And be willing to help. Be willing to introduce them to other people. Be willing to bring customers to other people and never ask for anything. Because when it's time to ask, you'll need to do very little.
Right.
Right? And so I think part of being a good networker is actually to genuinely care about people and genuinely care about what's important to them.
Yeah, those are, again, you're giving us gems and for the community. It's wonderful. So where can the community, if they want to reach out to you, where can they get a hold of you?
Okay, so if you want to go on a date with me, my cell phone, okay. So it depends on, you know, how you want to engage with me.
Right.
I'm on social media, so I'm pretty active on Instagram and LinkedIn and those places, and so that's an easy way to communicate with me. And then on my website at intopower.com, at intupower.com, you can see the current products and services that I have available. And so that'll give you a little rundown of, you know, how to get a hold of me, etc. And I throw a lot of events, and I throw a lot of parties, and so that's another place you can connect with me. Come to a fashion show, come to a party. I'll probably be at Cannes Film Festival in a couple months in Cannes, France, and then I'll probably go to one of the Formula One races in Monaco.
Yes, it's coming in May. Right?
And I was just in Argentina for a fashion show, so come party with me. And,
awesome.
you know, if you want to go boating, let me know. I'll go do that too. So.
I did have one more question that I forgot.
Yeah.
You know, the NFT space, how do you feel about that?
Well,
What's
I
your
think
thoughts?
that, you know, for me, I look at it as a practical technology with many applications. And while we may see nowadays the primary application has been in the art space and more common in the digital art space, NFTs are simply nothing more than just a mechanism of smart contracts. right? And the ability to tie together multiple considerations and factors and agreements into one smart contract. So I see this as a practical thing that, for me, I'm using it, and I've got many projects lined up from real estate, on the residential side, on the commercial side, on business transactions, in education, in e-learning, that these smart contracts are just mechanisms for automation using AI and other things to say that, okay, in this e-learning course, you complete this module, you upload your assignment, we check the assignment, that's what unlocks the next module. Right? That's a mechanism of smart contract that's available. Just like if someone were to purchase it in real estate, you could buy X number of days in a real estate property or X number of access, et cetera. And then we can now tie that into a smart ring or some other NFC type device that would unlock doors, that would unlock services. That you show up to a restaurant and automatically, because you walk through the door and you have a smart contract with this business, all of a sudden your green juice has already been ordered.
Wow.
Right, your table request is on its way. And so that's what I see as the practical application of it once you move past the fads and the trending initial things.
Very well. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for being with us and the community.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.